Where do gods come from? Where do they go? Some attempt to answer this was made by the religious philosopher Kumi of Smail in his book Ego Video Liber Deorum, which translates into the vernacular roughly as Gods, a spotter's guide. People said there had to be a supreme being because otherwise, how could the universe exist? Eh? And of course, there clearly had to be, said Kumi, a supreme being. But since the universe was a bit of a mess, it was obvious that the supreme being hadn't in fact made it. If he had made it, he would, being supreme, have made a much better job of it, with far better thought given. Taking an example at random to things like the design of the common nostril, or to put it another way, the existence of a badly put together watch proved the existence of a blind watchmaker. You only had to look around to see that there was room for improvement practically everywhere. This suggested that the universe had probably been put together in a bit of a rush by an underling while the supreme being wasn't looking, in the same way that Boy Scouts Association minutes are done on office photocopiers all over the country. So, reasoned Kumi, it was not a good idea to address any praise to a supreme being. It would only attract his attention and might cause trouble. And yet, there seemed to be a lot of lesser gods around the place. Kumi's theory was that gods come into being and grow and flourish because they are believed in. Belief itself is the food of the gods. Initially, when mankind lived in small primitive tribes, there were probably millions of gods. Now, there tended to be only a few important ones. Local gods of thunder and love, for example, tended to run together like pools of mercury as the small primitive tribes joined up and became huge, powerful primitive tribes with more sophisticated weapons. But any god could join. Any god could start small. Any god could grow in stature as believers increased and dwindle as they decreased. It was a great big game of snakes and ladders. Gods liked games, provided they were winning. Kumi's theory was largely based on the good old Gnostic heresy, which tends to turn up all over the multiverse whenever men get off their knees and start thinking for 2 minutes altogether. Although the shock of the sudden altitude tends to mean the thinking is a little whacked. But it upsets priests who tend to vent their displeasure in traditional ways. When the Omnian Church found out about Kumi, they displayed him in every town within the church's empire to demonstrate the essential flaws in his argument. There were a lot of towns, so they had to cut him up quite small.